I'm Phil Spencer, and Middlesbrough fans are already starting to feel a little bit anxious about the prospect of losing one of their key players during the month of January. Of course, we're talking about this man, Emmanuel Latte Lath, the striker of Middlesbrough, who was attracting interest from the Premier League. Reports have suggested that West Ham are keen on making a move for him in January, while Ipswich Town were also heavily linked with a move for him in the summer transfer window. That's where this kind of transfer saga really started to begin. It was on the final day of the summer transfer window when Ipswich came in for an offer for him. Middlesbrough turned that bid down, but Latte Lath seemingly had his head turned by the move and the prospect of playing in the Premier League. Middlesbrough were due to travel to Cardiff that day. For a fixture in the Championship. Latte Lath didn't travel with the squad. And although talks were held and the sounds coming out of the club were that everything was amicable there and after, and talk of how professional he was and that sort of thing, there was a lot of speculation about the fact that he'd had his head turned and was actually a little bit disillusioned at the fact that Middlesbrough had stood in his way with regards to a move. Now, with the January transfer window just a matter of days away from opening again, Latte Lath is a player who is likely to attract serious interest, and it's not really hard to see why when you see just how well he's performed in a Middlesbrough shirt. When you look at these numbers, it's not really difficult to see why there's such interest in his services. In his first campaign with Middlesbrough, Emmanuel Latte Lath scored 18 goals in total. That included an absolutely electric second half of the season where he was just absolutely unplayable at times. It took him a little bit of time to adapt to life at the club. The sort of first half of the season was a little bit patchy, but there was a little bit of a glimpse of potential as to what he could offer. But the second half of the season, he just absolutely exploded. He was scoring goals for fun in the second half of the season, and that's where he came away with the goal tally of 18 over the course of the campaign. Now, coming into this season, it was widely expected that he was going to be leading the goal scoring charts in the Championship. Such was his impressive form, and he's done pretty well considering the disruption that's been caused this season. 8 goals this term. He's played 21 matches for Middlesbrough, but not all of those have come in the starting 11. He has sort of shared the lone striker role with Tommy Conway, who has also started a fair number of games. But 8 goals in 21 is no mean feat, and particularly given the talk around his future, particularly in September and October, there was a bit of I guess rumours of the fact that he was disillusioned at the fact that he was blocked from moving to Ipswich and getting that crack at the Premier League. But since then, he has got his head down, and particularly over the last month or two, he has been absolutely brilliant for Middlesbrough. He's looked back to the player that we saw at the very start of the season and at the back end of last season. He's an absolute pest for defenders. You've got to be honest. He's absolutely electric in terms of pace. He's constantly on the shoulder of the defender, constantly putting them under pressure, and that really kind of leads to mistakes, which leads to a lot of his openings. He's also carved out a great relationship with Finn Azaz, who, as we know as well, has been brilliant in the number 10 role for Middlesbrough. And so that partnership has been really, really quite fruitful for Middlesbrough, with Finn Azaz also contributing a number of goals and assists. So if you look at his stats in a little bit more detail, this is from FOTMob, the football statistics website, where you can kind of see just how well he's performed. So the green bar symbolises just how well he's done in comparison to other strikers in the Championship, and you can see on all of these metrics he's up right near the very top of them. Goals 8 this season, expected goals is 8.28, so he's performing kind of on track. In terms of his XG with shots on target, 8.52. 2 of the goals have come from the penalty spot. Non-penalties, you can see there. Shots, he's had 42, which is among the highest in the Championship, and his shots on target have been brilliant as well, with 16 of those going on target. So with 8 goals, with 16 shots on target, it's proven that he's not just a player who, as I mentioned, is a pest for defenders, who uses his pace to cause all sorts of problems. When those opportunities do come along, he is really quite lethal in front of goal as well, and that's something which Middlesbrough have been really, really happy with. He's come in and he's provided an all-round threat in attack, really. He is the sort of all-round number 9 that Middlesbrough have been crying out for many years. And so for Middlesbrough, the talk of such a potentially disastrous exit in January could be a big blow, particularly as we move into the second half of the season with Middlesbrough keen to challenge for promotion. So talk of Latte Lath's exit has been fuelled in the last few days by his agent. He's quite an outspoken agent, it's fair to say. He's clearly seen the opportunity in January that Latte Lath could attract interest from the Premier League, and his agent clearly seems quite keen to try and force a move away from Middlesbrough. So speaking to a publication in Italy, Tutto Mercato Web, excuse my pronunciation, his agent was quoted as saying 8 goals in the first part of the championship, and we expect something to happen in January. He's a striker, and strikers are always the subject of attention in the January transfer window. So the fact that he's come out a couple of weeks before the start of the January transfer window opening shows that there's real intent there from his part to try and force through a move for his client. Not good news for Middlesbrough, but I guess it is part and parcel of Middlesbrough's recruitment model to buy low and sell high. And if he is someone who is going to be attracting significant interest from the Premier League, if there's an opportunity to rake in some good money for him, and crucially, if Latte Lath is interested in moving to the Premier League, which based on the links to Ipswich over the summer he was, it does feel like a move that I guess does have fans a little bit worried with regards to what will happen once the transfer window opens. It's not the first time that his agent has spoken out about Latte Lath's future either. He's been quite vocal on social media. Baropolis, who often aggregate a lot of the Boro news that comes from the press, they've had several quotes from Matthias Veneroso, Latte Lath's agent, from what he's been saying. He also conducted an exclusive interview with Teesside Live following the end of the summer transfer window, and he was quoted as saying, "It was simply an unexpected opportunity to realise a dream. He's always wanted to play in the Premier League. That would have that would have been a huge moment for him, and will be a life-changing economically and professionally." Before and immediately after, he was of course focused on Middlesbrough, but he is human too. When something so huge came as a surprise, it was a strange moment for him too, and not easy to manage. Since then, it's not been easy because the team have not always been getting the results they want. Emmanuel was often playing well, but not getting the goals. And of course, as a striker, you want goals above all else. So those kind of comments were suggesting, I guess, just kind of explaining what Latte Lath's headspace was like following the end of the summer transfer window. I think any supporter who saw him in action for Middlesbrough could see that maybe his head wasn't quite right. It also coincided with a bit of a dip in form, or a dip in goal scoring form at least, because you could see that Latte Lath was trying in the majority of those games. He was getting into the right positions, but it just wasn't quite happening for him. And that was sort of leading to a bit of frustration from his point of view, but also from the fans' point of view. But that said, that has sort of changed in the last couple of months. The last month in particular, because Latte Lath has been brilliant with the bulk of his goals coming within the last 4 to 6 weeks. Obviously, he scored a hatful against Oxford away, and that kind of kick-started things for him. But he's been brilliant in the months since. But I think with his agent speaking quite openly about his future, it does suggest really that going into January, it is going to be a move that is one to watch for Middlesbrough fans. So the key question really is, will Latte Lath leave Middlesbrough in the January transfer window? And I think you've got to say that it would be quite naive to think that he won't. I think Middlesbrough are in a position where they don't need to sell anyone. That's quite clear to see. We have sold players over recent transfer windows. You're looking at Morgan Rogers back in January. Previous to that, we're looking at the likes of Chuba Rakpong and Marcus Tavernier and Jed Spence, and players who we have managed to sell for significant money. So in terms of the financial position of the club, Middlesbrough aren't under any pressure to sell any player in January, let alone Latte Lath. But I think what comes with Middlesbrough's recruitment model is the fact that we do know where we stand in the football pecking order, you've got to say. Middlesbrough are a club who like to buy players with a high ceiling in terms of potential. The business model is based on signing players for relatively low transfer fees, developing them within the club, and either turning them into players who will increase the ability of Middlesbrough's team. But hopefully the idea of that is to bring them in and they'll improve with the club and help the club secure promotion to the Premier League. But if that doesn't happen, players will come in and improve, and then they can be sold for a hefty profit. And that's something which could well happen with Latte Lath. I think it was £4 million that he joined for when he arrived at Middlesbrough back in the summer of 2023. And with so much interest in him from Ipswich over the summer, and West Ham, who appear to be leading the way going into the January transfer window, it seems that Middlesbrough would or could be in line for a much bigger payday than that which they paid for him. I think you'd be looking for, I don't know, for a player like Latte Lath, you'd be looking anywhere between 20 and 30 million potentially, which would be a sizable profit on what we paid for him in the first place. Now, I think the key question for Middlesbrough is how would they handle the prospect of losing Latte Lath? In truth, given the interest on the transfer deadline day in August, it wouldn't come as a surprise if someone came in for him now. There will have been discussions behind the scenes with regards to his future. We're not privy to that information. We don't know what's been decided, and potentially the fact that the move to Ipswich didn't happen was pinned on the fact that Middlesbrough wouldn't have time to sign a replacement for him. But it also means that for Middlesbrough, I guess, if he did leave in January, if that move happened earlier on in January, it would mean that Middlesbrough did have time to bring in someone else to replace him in the team and fill in his role in the other squad. Middlesbrough obviously signed Tommy Conway in the summer transfer window. But he hadn't really been at the club long, so it would have been quite naive to sell Latte Lath and rely entirely on Tommy Conway, because you never really know how a player is going to settle at a club and how they're going to fit into the system and that sort of thing. It does turn out that Tommy Conway's done really well since he's come in, and so Middlesbrough wouldn't be left in too bad a situation if Latte Lath was to leave. Tommy Conway will be a more than suitable number one striker for the club. But I think as far as Latte Lath's concerned, it is one that Middlesbrough will be hoping to, they'll be hoping to keep hold of him. But if he does move on, then you've got to think that Middlesbrough will be in a position where they're trying to attract top dollar for him. And hopefully, if they did do that, they would also be in a position to sign a suitable replacement for him. So, yeah, I'm really keen to hear what you've got to think about Emmanuel Latte Lath. Would you be open to Middlesbrough selling him in January? If so, how much do you think it would cost for a club like West Ham or Ipswich to sign him from Middlesbrough? Drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think about his future and whether you'd be open to selling him. And if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like and hit subscribe as well. And I will catch up with you next time.